I'm Glenn, 48 years old, in good shape for an old man, well established in my occupation as an accountant. I know, accountants are known for being boring. I have to admit, I'm not the most adventurous of humans. I don't go mountain climbing, hunting sharks, or jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, but I also don't go out drinking with the boys every night picking up attractive women, or golf all weekend long leaving my loving wife home by herself. Overall, I'm a good solid husband who has been faithful to my sweet wife for almost 25 years. My wife is Amy. She's 47 and in great shape from working out twice a week. Whereas I look my age, Amy looks to be in her 30s, and could even be mistaken to be in her late 20s. We went into a restaurant one time, and the waitress asked us what I and my daughter would like to drink. We didn't correct her, and decided to have some fun with the whole thing. So all throughout the meal, my wife and I would passionately kiss each other and run our hands up and down each other's thighs. I even reached over and cupped one of my wife's breasts while I was kissing her. The server's eyes were huge all night long as she kept watching us and whispering with all the other servers and pointing at us. The server nearly threw our bill at us and said, "That's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen." We left her a nice big tip, and as we walked out of the restaurant, we just smiled at her and Amy showed her the big wedding ring on her finger. It certainly wasn't our fault she jumped to the wrong conclusions. As I think back, it's been a long time since we've had fun like that. In fact, it's been a long time since we've had any kind of fun, period. We're like any couple. The love starts off boiling hot, and lots of it, 2 or 3 times a day. Then it eventually drops to once a day, then 3 times a week, then once a week, finally leveling off about 2 or 3 times a month. And those 2 or 3 times are exactly like all of the other times. Boring, unimaginative, and basically unfulfilling. Amy had worked for the same company for nearly 20 years. She'd had several bosses over the years since it's a big multinational company, with over 100 employees in her office alone. I had met most of her bosses over the years at different company functions, and they seemed to be nice people, mostly older due to seniority and the practice of promoting from within the company. The last company function we attended was the retirement party for her latest boss, who was a nice 65-year-old gentleman who had been like a father to Amy. She bawled like a baby when she told him goodbye. All the way home, I could see how upset she was, so I tried to make some small talk by asking her if she knew who her new boss was going to be, since she hadn't introduced me to anyone at the party as being her new boss. She lit into me, telling me to stop third-degreeing her. Did I have to be so insensitive at a time like this when she had just lost her work father? You would have thought George had died, not just retired. I could tell there was something bothering her more than just George going off to greener pastures. I just let it drop, and we rode the rest of the way in silence, me being afraid to have my head chopped off at the shoulders again. So for the next couple of weeks, Amy came home each night seemingly more angry than the night before. Finally, I got tired of dealing with her foul moods and asked her what the heck was wrong. She broke down crying and told me her new boss was a jerk. He was young, brash, dumb as a box of rocks, and the CEO's nephew. That was the only reason he was even there. She wasn't sure she could continue to work there any longer. She was really upset most of all because she thought her boss would be another older person who would take her under their wing and treat her like a daughter like all her other bosses. She didn't want her boss to be some young punk who thought he could boss her around like she was his darn slave. I told her I would support her any way I could, and that she should try to hold out a little longer. If he was the nephew of one of the company owners, he would most likely be in line to get the next promotion available, and would be moving on soon. She agreed that would be a good plan of action, as long as I was there each night to soothe and comfort her. An agreement was reached. As the next couple of months passed by, her attitude toward her job and her boss, Troy, seemed to change and get better. She seemed to be liking Troy much better than when she first met him. In fact, now every night it was Troy this and Troy that, and Troy's so smart and funny and blah blah freaking blah. I was getting so tired of listening to how wonderful Troy was that I was beginning to need some soothing and comfort from Amy. It went on like this for another couple of months, with the praises for Troy becoming more enthusiastic and nauseating. I should have realized at that time that her praises for Troy were greater than any praises she had ever had for me. I don't ever remember her ever telling anyone how smart or funny I was. I guess I was just her old, boring, loving, faithful husband who would always be there for her whenever she needed me. It really shouldn't have come as much of a surprise when one Friday night she came home from work and immediately went to our bathroom, showered, and began getting dressed up in some of her beautiful clothes. Friday was our usual date night. We usually went out to a nice restaurant and then to a movie. But she was not dressing like a night at the movies, so I thought I better ask her what she was dressing up for. Troy and I are going out on a date tonight. I don't know what time I might be home, but don't wait up for me. Wait, you and Troy are going out on a date? This is our date night. I argued, rather than saying there was no way she was going anywhere tonight or any other time with Troy. It didn't even dawn on me to say she couldn't go out with Troy. All I could do was whine about it was supposed to be our date night. Are you losing your hearing too? She raised her voice louder and repeated, Yes, Troy and I are going out on a date tonight. I don't know what time I might be home, but don't wait up for me. Can you hear me now? What makes you think I'm going to allow you to go out on a date with this Troy character tonight or any other time? You're my wife, and the only one you go on dates with is me. Can you hear me now? That's right. You're my husband, but I'm not your property. You can't tell me what to do or who I can see and go on dates with, so tonight I am going out on a date with Troy. Can you hear me now? If you think I'm just going to stand here and let you go on a date with your boss, who is young enough to be your son, then you're insane. I'm not going to allow you to make me your humiliated husband. I don't know what that is, but it sounds dirty. Besides, what are you going to do to stop me? Tie me up? Beat me up? Kill me? At that very moment, that last idea seemed to have some merit. I could feel the hatred and bile rising in my throat, and I just wanted to slap her silly, tie her up, and kill her. How could she disrespect me and our marriage vows so blatantly? What kind of hold did this Troy jerk have over her? Okay, so what does Troy have that I don't have that is so appealing to you? Lots of money? Lots of power? A big anatomy? Or maybe you want that big anatomy in your precious area making you happy? How about if he shoves it up your backside? Make sure you hang around long enough to experience that particular pleasure. You don't have to get crude and vulgar about it. See, that's one of the differences between you and Troy. He is always a perfect gentleman and never uses foul language like that. You use that kind of language all the time. And if you really must know, he has a large, thick 10-inch anatomy. You ought to see the huge bulge in his pants. But you know size has never mattered to me. I've always been satisfied with your 7 inches. But I think that Troy's 10 inches makes your 7 inches seem kind of puny and insignificant and unsatisfying. Doesn't it? The only time I ever used language like that was when we were in bed having intimacy, because you told me you loved it when I talked dirty to you. I have always been a gentleman and shown you the respect you used to deserve. Well, you just need to learn to deal with this because I'm going no matter what you want or say. We'll just see how the night goes, and if it goes like I expect it to, I won't be home until tomorrow afternoon. I'll text you to let you know how the night is progressing and that I'm safe and being well cared for. What do you mean? You're going to see how the night goes, and if it goes like you expect it to, you won't be coming home, I asked. Well, at dinner we'll get to know each other a little better, and if it seems like Troy is on the same intellectual level as I am, then we'll move on to bigger and better things, if you know what I mean. Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that you and Troy are on the same intellectual level, I said as sarcastically as I possibly could. Oh, well, thank you, sweetheart. That's nice of you to say. Where did you ever get the idea that I would be okay with any of this nonsense? I questioned. Janie and Sharon work with me in the same department. We get together every day for coffee and sometimes a drink after work. They told me they had each gone out with Troy and they had told their husbands about it, just like I'm telling you, and their husbands were fine with the whole arrangement. They're the ones who told me about Troy's big anatomy and how good it felt. I know Janie and Sharon's husbands, and I can't believe either of those guys could possibly know about this and be all right with it. So, are you calling Janie and Sharon liars? She asked. Yes, I am. Maybe while you're gone, I'll give those two guys a call and they can explain to me how I should be all right with all of this Troy stuff. You know, like how they're all right with it. I'm sure they can settle me right down and make me understand how wonderful this all is and how it will help our marriage. Because right now, I don't understand any of this. By the way, this will help our marriage. At least, it helped their marriages by opening Janie's and Sharon's eyes to what they've been missing out on in their love lives, and they now do things with their husbands they never would have thought about doing before. So see, this is going to improve our boring love life. Well, thank you, Troy, the marriage counselor. What the heck would we have done without you to open my wife's eyes to the many advantages of enjoying a big giant anatomy? You don't think you might come back home and be very disappointed in my 7 inches? Honey, I'll say it again. It has nothing to do with size. It has to do with freeing up my love side. Me and us, experiencing love pleasures that have been hidden from us. You'll see, this is going to be good for both of us. If you walk out that door tonight, then you will be served with divorce papers the first thing Monday morning. In fact, as soon as that door shuts with you on the other side of it, I'll be calling Sid immediately and asking him to draw up the papers yet tonight. I may even have him serve you tonight at your dinner with Troy or at your hotel. Do you know where you're going to be with him tonight so my process server doesn't have to waste time hunting you down? Perhaps you could write down your itinerary for me before you leave. I guess I'll see you tomorrow afternoon otherwise. Come on, Glenn. You know you won't divorce me. You love me too much to divorce me over just one little date with my boss. You would be lost without me. And besides, this is just one date to have intimacy with Troy. I don't love him and never will. I love you. Always have and always will. It's just intimacy. It's no big deal in the overall scheme of things. Just one night in all the thousands of nights we've been together and will be together. You can't just share me for one night after all those other nights you've had me all to yourself and all the nights we'll have together in the future. You're the most selfish man I've ever known. I walked out of the room and dug out Sid's card and laid it by the phone so she would be sure and see it as she walked out. I also wrote down Janie's and Sharon's husbands' names and phone numbers boldly so she wouldn't miss them. She came into the kitchen all dolled up and smelling like a 2-bit disloyal woman. Or maybe I should say a 2-bit floozy, since she's too darn stupid to charge for it and is just giving it away for free. To show just how stupid she really is, she actually wrote down the restaurant and hotel she and Troy Boy would be at, in case of emergency. What a dumb woman. She must have been sniffing glue all these years to get this stupid. She walked around the kitchen island and tried to kiss me on the cheek before she left. I turned my head away and pushed her back toward the doorway. I didn't even want to breathe the same air as she did. She disgusted me in ways I can't even describe. As soon as the door shut, I turned and vomited in the sink. The woman I had loved for almost 25 years was betraying me with a young punk who could have been the same age as our kids if we had decided to have kids. Right at that moment, I was so glad we had made that decision so many years ago. We both realized that Amy was not mommy material and would never be a good mother. What made this even worse was that I just realized as I stood alone in my kitchen, where we had prepared so many meals together, we were only 2 days away from our 25th wedding anniversary. We got married on Valentine's Day because I was just so freaking romantic. So much for romance. Hello to being with some other guy. I immediately called Sid and told him the entire situation. He told me he was sorry to hear what was going on and begged me to wait until things had settled down a little. I told him I wanted to get rid of the disloyal woman as soon as possible. He assured me he would draw up the divorce petition and have her served tonight at the hotel. He said it would be better to serve her while they were in the midst of their wild activities. We could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The process server could serve her the papers, and his private investigator could get some pictures and videos of them doing the dirty deed in case we needed them for court. I told him to do whatever he wanted to do to her. I just wanted her gone and out of my life as soon as possible. I then ran to the hardware store and got new locks for all the doors on our house. There was no way my wife was ever going to bring her improper self inside my house ever again. For the next few hours, I sat staring at the television screen, not really knowing or caring what I was watching. Finally, around midnight, I heard my phone ding, and I knew I had received a text. It was Sid, with an update with some pictures and a video attached. The message said she had been served and the private investigator had gotten some pictures and a great video of the cheating couple when they opened the door to their hotel room. I guess the private investigator had bribed the desk clerk to give him a key card so they could just open the door and walk right into the room. I thought that was probably illegal, but I really didn't give a hoot right then. When they opened the door, all they saw was his bare backside kneeling at the end of the bed, with his face buried in between my wife's thighs. Troy's boy's head was bouncing around like he was bobbing for apples at a Halloween party. They heard my wife say, "Troy, baby, get up here and give me that big anatomy. I want your 10 inches making me feel special. I want to feel you making me so happy I won't even feel my wimpy husband's little 7 inches when he is with me. Hurry, baby. I can't wait any longer." They snapped several pictures on the way in the door, and several after they had surprised the happy couple. I guess they scared them so bad when they slammed the door, that little Troy boy wet himself on the floor. My dear, sweet, lovable wife screamed at the top of her lungs and crawled up the bed backwards, slamming hard against the headboard. She then jumped off the bed and ran into the bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it. The process server had to hand the papers to her in person and couldn't do that if she was locked in the bathroom. So he just grabbed a chair and told her he could stay there a lot longer than she could stay in the bathroom. After about a half hour, she finally exited the bathroom wrapped in a towel that barely covered her backside. The process server verified her identity and told her she had been served. I guess she broke down bawling, expecting little Troy boy to come and comfort her. However, he was still just standing there shaking, totally immobile, and in shock. It was then the fun began, and I'm so glad the private investigator was filming and photographing the whole thing. My dear loving wife looked over at little scared Troy and saw for the first time what she hadn't seen yet that night. Troy's little anatomy. He was all of maybe 4 inches, allowing for some shrinkage from being scared to pieces. My wife went ballistic. She ran over and grabbed his private area. His whole package totally fit inside my wife's delicate hand. I could see the muscles in my wife's arm tense and the veins pop out as she squeezed his parts hard and screamed, "This is what I trashed my marriage vows over? I destroyed my marriage for this shriveled-up little anatomy? You miserable piece of garbage. What happened to that monster anatomy the other girls told me about? I know it couldn't possibly have shrunk up this much just because you're a little coward. You absolute jerk. And I mean that literally. You awful person. I ought to harm you right here. No court would ever convict me once they saw this little thing." It was actually hard to hear what Amy was screaming since the little jerk's screams of pain were so loud. Baby Troy let out a screech like a little schoolgirl on the playground. Just watching made me cringe with empathy. No man wants to see some guy, even Troy boy, get his package put in a vice like that. But I have to admit my empathy lasted only a couple of seconds. She then began beating on him, knocking him to the floor where she began kicking him in the private area as hard as she could. He rolled up into the fetal position and began crying like the little spoiled baby he was. My investigator just kept recording and didn't try to intervene. He just let her go after little baby Troy, kicking and hitting him with a ferocity I'd never seen in my sweet, gentle wife. I guess someone must have complained about the noise because the night manager and hotel security came in and broke up the melee with my investigator recording the whole time. They asked my investigator to leave and told him they wanted a copy of his recording to make sure the hotel's liability was covered and they wouldn't get sued. As I watched the video, I couldn't believe how much I was enjoying it. I had projected it up onto my 65-inch screen in the living room so I wouldn't miss anything. It actually had to be that large so you could see Troy's little part. The thing I did notice was that right at the end of the bed where this fellow was kneeling while being inappropriate with my wife was a pair of tighty-whitey underwear with a couple of bright green socks rolled up inside of them. The idiot had stuffed his underwear with a pair of socks to give himself a large bulge in his pants. I nearly wet myself when I figured out what he'd done. I couldn't wait to watch this with Amy. No, don't even think I was going to pass up the chance to make her watch every second of this recording if she ever made it home. As I was in my third screening of this most enjoyable movie, I got a call from the police station. It seems they had arrested Amy for assault, and she needed me to come to the police station and bail her out. As I remember, people in her position only get one phone call. I bet she was upset when I hung up on her, wasting her one link to the outside world. I think that meant she was going to have to spend the rest of the night in jail. That was a real bummer for her, I bet. About noon the next day, I saw Amy's sister Julie's car pull into the driveway. She came storming to the door and pounded on it so hard that I thought she was going to knock it off the hinges. When I opened the door, she came barging through, shoving me aside while calling me every inappropriate name in the book. She informed me that I was the lowest person on the face of the earth for abandoning her wonderful innocent sister in her dire time of need. She said she was just there to pack up some of Amy's clothes because she would be staying with her until Amy could hire a lawyer to sue my backside off. I wasn't quite sure what the grounds for her lawsuit were going to be, but I guess I would find out soon enough. Or at least, Sid would find out. As Julie was storming back out the door carrying a couple of suitcases, I yelled after her, "Did she tell you she was caught being inappropriate with her boss at the hotel and she got arrested for assaulting him when she found out his anatomy was only 4 inches long? You might want to ask her about it. It makes for a good story and an even better movie. I'll send you a copy. Be sure and project it on a bigger screen or you might not be able to see his little part." She stopped and looked through the car window at Amy, who was sitting there sobbing into her hands. Then she turned around and looked at me. She made a rude gesture before she threw the suitcases in the back seat and climbed behind the wheel. By the time she got home, she had received a very interesting text with some pictures and a great video attached. But the fun had only just begun. I decided it was time to call Janie's and Sharon's husbands to hear what they had to say about what I had somehow missed in my wife's argument about dating her boss. I thought they might not really be as into this whole thing as the girls tried to lead my wife to believe. I thought they might also want to watch the video of their wives' mutual boss with my cheating floozy of a wife. If their wives had also strayed with the little wonder boy, I wondered if the girls had bothered to tell them about their adventure into disloyalty and what they might have discovered about the length of Troy's little anatomy. When I called Janie's husband, Joe, he didn't seem to know anything about Janie having a tryst with Troy. If Janie had at least attempted to get physical with her boss, which I really had no doubt she had omitted telling Joe anything about it. I asked him if he would like to see the video of Troy cheating with my disloyal wife. He was a little hesitant to agree to watch it, thinking he would make me mad. I told him to not worry about a thing. He could make copies and pass them around to all his friends and co-workers for all I cared because it was going on the internet for all the world to see. I texted him the video. Then I called Sharon's husband, Charlie, and we had basically the same conversation I'd had with Joe. I sent him a text with the video. I got the impression that maybe both men weren't happy to hear this news, but I felt they had the right to know. I learned that they weren't more understanding than I was because they didn't even know about it. At least my dear, loving, sweet wife had explained everything I needed to know about how the whole thing worked, and how it was going to improve our marriage by improving our love life. Oops, something got messed up along the way. It ended our marriage and our love life, but now that I look back at it, maybe it actually did improve my marriage by exposing my wife as a lying, cheating floozy so I could dump her disloyal, worthless self and would eventually improve my love life when I found another woman to have love with who wasn't a lying, cheating floozy, if there are even any of those left in this messed up world. Sid notified me on Monday that Amy had refused to sign the divorce papers because she didn't want a divorce and wanted to try to reconcile. She claimed there had been no cheating because there had been no sexual intercourse. I guess she doesn't think a guy's face buried in her thighs constitutes cheating because anatomy never entered her private area. The truth is, Troy's tongue probably went farther in her area than his anatomy ever would have. So by definition, that should have constituted sexual intercourse. I guess we'd just have to let the courts decide whether sexual intercourse had actually taken place or not. But I didn't really care what they decided. Cheating had taken place the minute she took one step outside the door of our house on her way to have a date with another man while still married to me. She had full intentions of going to a hotel with another man to have intimacy with him. Cheating! I really have to laugh that I just called little boy Troy a man. I guess I was getting carried away with trying to come up with proper definitions of sexual intercourse and cheating that a court might arrive at. There was no man to be found anywhere in or near little boy Troy. Here's some more fun for you. Now that I had served the divorce papers on Amy and sent the videos to Joe and Charlie to out their cheating, disloyal wives, and sent the video to Amy's sister, Julie, so she would at least know the truth and not the lies I was sure Amy was telling her, I needed to furnish the video to someone else, the CEO of Amy's employing company. I was sure they would love to see just how their employees fraternize after hours. Oh, and I, of course, did post the video online anonymously, but making sure the names of the two stars of the video were prominently displayed on the screen. I drew a circle around Troy's little anatomy so everyone could figure out just where it was on the screen at all times. The little circle was keyed to follow his little anatomy everywhere it went on the screen. And it was a little circle. It didn't really need to be very big. The circle was a bright lime green color to match the socks Troy had inside his undies and to make it easier to see and follow. I didn't want anyone to lose track of that monster. If it just suddenly popped up on the screen after someone had lost track of it, it could have scared someone into having a heart attack. The last thing I needed right now was someone suing me if they ever found out who put that video online for all to see and enjoy. The fun's not over yet. Someone from Amy's office called me on Thursday to see if I knew where Amy was since she hadn't been to work all week. I told them to check with Troy to see if he knew where she was since he had been the last person to be seen with her by almost the whole world by that time. They said Troy hadn't been into work either, and they thought he had been fired by the CEO, his uncle, personally. What a freaking shame about that. An up-and-comer like Troy was shot down in the prime of his professional life. Is there no justice in this world anymore? On Friday, I got a couple of angry calls from Janie and Sharon calling me some of the same names that Julie had called me last Saturday afternoon. Since it seems to be unanimous with all those girls, I must be all of those things. Who am I to argue with such fine, upstanding ladies? They would never lie, would they? Sid called me on Tuesday of the following week and told me the court was ordering marriage counseling for Amy and me. He told me there was no way I could get out of it, even though he knew it was a waste of my time. He said to just be cordial, and if I had nothing good to say, I should just say nothing. It was going to be a darn quiet 10 sessions, because I couldn't even think of one good thing to say either to or about Amy. Our first session was on the next night, Wednesday, at 7 o'clock. I showed up with my best suit on. I was dressed to impress. I couldn't very well show up in the t-shirt I had printed that said, "My soon-to-be ex-wife is disloyal. For a good time, call 555-2212. I had to save that for Saturdays when I went grocery shopping and on Sundays when I went for a walk in the park. I would also wear it if I went bowling or to a movie or just about anywhere else it was appropriate to wear a t-shirt. I had 20 of them printed up so I would always have one available on short notice, so I didn't have to do laundry every day. You wouldn't believe the attention I get while wearing the shirt. Some women laugh, while others give me the dirtiest looks imaginable while calling me some of the same names that other women call me. Most men laugh and give me a thumbs up. I've even caught a couple of them entering the number into their cell phones or writing it down on their palms. I wonder how many calls she's gotten since I started advertising her number to the buying public. Oh wait, they don't even have to buy it, she's just giving it away free. Hold on, the fun is not over yet. We went to 4 counseling sessions before the counselor informed the court there was no hope of reconciliation and there didn't need to be any further sessions. I had dressed up for each session and was cordial to the counselor while ignoring Amy completely. I always spoke with restraint and respect, answering all of the counselor's questions while never saying even one word to Amy. After our last session, Amy asked if we could talk. I said, "Nope," and walked away. I could hear her sobs as I walked away, never looking back. Amy finally signed the divorce papers. I had been more than fair giving her half of everything, including the proceeds of the sale of the house. I never saw Amy again after our last counseling session. Our lawyers handled all of the proceedings, and we just showed up at our own lawyers' offices to sign what needed to be signed. My lawyer told me that Amy had gotten fired along with Janie and Sharon for violating company fraternization policies, even though they only had actual proof of Troy and Amy violating company policy. I guess the ladies' husbands led them into the CEO's office and made them confess to their transgressions before they dumped them and kicked them out of their houses. When will women learn? Real husbands, real men, will not tolerate their wives being miserable, cheating floozies. Joe and Charlie and I get together for a beer once in a while to talk about things. It seems that once Troy had been with one of them, he blackmailed them to bring him another. He told them they would lose their jobs if they didn't tell all the other women in the office what a stud he was and that he had the biggest anatomy they had ever seen. They also had to lie about how good it felt inside them and how much trouble they had trying to fit it into their mouths and private areas. How wonderful Troy was in bed. What a great partner he was. All so they wouldn't lose their jobs, which they now have. Foolish women. I hear that Amy gets recognized wherever she goes. When she goes out in public, which is rare, she has to wear a disguise. She hasn't found another job and is living on public welfare and the money she got in the divorce. Her online video has received over 1.5 million views. The comments people leave are sometimes fun to read. Whenever I'm feeling sad or depressed, I watch the video. It's just so much fun to watch little Troy getting kicked in the private area over and over. I run that part forward and backward over and over. By the way, I heard the hotel made Troy pay for cleaning the carpet since he's the one who wet it. I guess plain Janie was the first domino to fall. Troy had honed in on her almost immediately as being the most vulnerable. Joe was out of town a lot and Janie was plain vanilla. She barely wore any makeup and dressed ultra-conservative. Troy began his assault the first day he was there by complicating Janie on her natural beauty. After a week of relentless flattery, he took her to lunch, and over burgers and fries, he talked her into going to his apartment for an afternoon of fun and games. The cheap fellow couldn't even take his victims to a decent restaurant. The next day, she told Sharon what they had done, and what a great partner he was, and how his 10-inch anatomy touched her in places she'd never been touched before. She said she lost count of how many sensations she had and how many times he was pleased in her mouth and private area. She told Sharon she needed to experience the magic of Troy's big anatomy for herself. So Sharon told Troy she wanted to be with him the next day. So they went to a lunch of burgers and fries followed by fun and games at his apartment. So he got 2 ladies for around $20, a lot cheaper than hiring a pro. The next day, Janie and Sharon were comparing notes about Troy's big anatomy and the magic he could perform with that big wand. They told Amy that their experiences had been beyond their abilities to put into words. The only way she could know what they were talking about was to experience it for herself. This led to Amy asking Troy out on a date on Friday night. The restaurant Amy told me they were going to wasn't a burger joint, so I'm guessing Amy was paying. Silly woman. I guess you know the rest of the story. I'm not going to feed you a bunch of nonsense about how my life is so wonderful now that I'm rid of the cheating lady. I don't have all of these women lined up at my door. I didn't have a gorgeous lawyer who I married as soon as my divorce was final. Sid is a short, fat, bald-headed Jewish guy who I've known for over 20 years. I've dated a couple of times, but I just wasn't really into it. Amy spoiled my chances of ever having a loving relationship with a woman. Whenever I look at a woman now, all I see is a potential lying, cheating, disloyal person that will eventually rip my heart out of my chest and stomp on it. It just seems that all women are out there looking for that bigger anatomy, because no matter what they have at home, it's just never enough. I have a solemn pledge to myself. I will never be with a married woman. I don't want to ever put another man through what I've gone through. So I have a way of weeding out the suspected married women who approach me in the bars with their little black, inappropriate dresses on. I just simply ask them a straightforward question. So what does your husband think about you being here trying to pick up a man to be with you? If they hesitate for even just a couple of seconds or stumble over some kind of answer, I just say to them, "Go home to your husband, you disloyal woman. Tell him you love him, and thank your lucky stars you have him and that he hasn't caught you yet and thrown your cheating back out of the house. You make me sick." Thank you, Amy, for messing up both our lives until the day we die, you miserable woman. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.